Good morning. We are ASMM. I didn't have my little intro because I couldn't find it, quite honestly.
Like
We
we
are
call
ASMM.
business.
I know, it's just one of those mornings. We had such a good conversation before we started this episode, so that did it. Hi, everybody. This is Ann Brennan. You are listening to ASMM Small Business Connections. If you're watching this, we are streaming live. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, all live right now. And what that means to you is you have experts in the room who can help you. So ask questions. You can leave a comment below, and when you leave your comment, we'll see it. It'll pop up on my screen, and I can ask the question right here live, and that's so helpful. It also makes it a little more interesting as we're talking. So please do ask questions. We have a great guest today. By the way, I think we're episode 102. 102 episodes since March, so that's pretty amazing. It's been a great year. So, all right. So, our guest today is Lisa McLeod. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, it's great to be with you today.
I just jumped right in. Usually, we have this nice little intro, but I was so excited because you are a local girl, even though you live down in the Atlanta area. So, we were getting to chat a little bit about that before we started.
That's right.
So,
I was born and raised in DC, and now I live in Atlanta. And for the last several months, it's been the longest time I've ever spent in my own home.
that's crazy, isn't it? It is, and I feel the same way. We have an office that's about 40 minutes away from here. And at first, I was driving back and forth to it because I'm like, yeah, I'm the only one in the office. It doesn't matter, the other ladies have children, and so they're home. And then I got tired of it. So I think now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be here because why drive 40 minutes just to spend time by myself? So I've been at my house. So Lisa, tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, probably the thing I'm the best known for is I am the author of Selling with Noble Purpose. And I developed this noble purpose methodology after some research revealed that salespeople with a purpose bigger than money outsell salespeople who are focused on their targets and quotas. And so I work with organizations all over the world. I work with senior leaders to infuse a noble purpose into their organization. I work with sales teams as well. And I do a lot of speaking. I am the author of several other books, one called Leading with Noble Purpose. So I write, speak, and consult.
That is great. Well, and I have to tell you, I had you on. So something comes over to me and says, we have these people, here, choose from these people who you want to have as guests. And as soon as I saw your subject, I thought, oh, this is absolutely right up my alley because I discovered my own purpose about 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and it totally changed my life. And actually, we totally changed everything we do in our business. It totally changed everything. Our purpose, even with ASMM, is to stop suicide. We're a digital marketing agency that dedicates almost all of our work towards stopping suicide in some way. So we started Burgers and Bands for suicide prevention. So having that, knowing that purpose is huge.
Mhm.
But let's talk a little bit about, we're going to talk a little bit about how you know your purpose, because I got lucky in that. That was
Mhm.
an easy one for me. But also, is it actually the whole idea of purpose and picking a purpose, choosing a purpose, finding your purpose? Is it fluffy?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
a lot of people think it is. And so there's two, when I write about noble purpose, there's two misconceptions. One is that your noble purpose as an organization has to be this high-minded philanthropic thing. And if someone like you is trying to prevent suicide, other people feel like, well, I don't have anything that big or that good.
Right.
The other misperception is that it's this gauzy and fluffy thing. So I want to give you a really concrete, simple example of a noble purpose. We worked with an IT provider. They did IT for small businesses, and they would have described their business as exactly that. We do IT for small businesses. So what we landed on for their purpose is we make small businesses more successful. Like
There
that's
you
it.
go.
That's
That's
their
it.
whole purpose. It's not sexy. It's not preventing suicide, although I could connect the dots from business failure to suicide. But anyhow, but just
Right.
on a practical day-to-day basis, we help make small businesses more successful. And they drove 8 years worth of exponential revenue growth, double-digit revenue growth based on that simple premise. They help thousands and thousands of businesses. And the reason why is if you show up every day saying, I'm an IT provider, you're probably going to do good work. But if you show up for your customers saying, my job is to make you more successful, it shifts your orientation. You interact differently with the customers. And then what happens is you start to innovate in your business, because then you start to say, oh, well, if our whole purpose is to make small businesses more successful, do we have the right offering? Should we be doing different things? So it acts as a strategic North Star and a daily motivator.
That's so funny. I'm actually wondering whether your client is my client, because I just posted about my client this morning and the fact that he's an IT company. And
Yeah.
the first thing he said to me is, I help you keep working,
Yeah.
right? If your computers go down, you can't work. And what we were finding, and he said it to me before I told him, he's like, do you have someone in your office who is your person you call and you say, hey, can you fix this? And is that person's role, or is their role something else? And I'm like, yeah, it's my COO. I call my COO and say, my computer's not working, or the system's down. And she would take her time off and come over and do this. But then she's not doing the work she should be doing, and we're losing money.
Right. Well,
So,
and this is a really good example of one of the things we always say. We have a chapter in Selling with Noble Purpose called Why Specificity is Sexy. And I want to point out, I don't know if listeners are hearing this, but the reason to get clear on your purpose is, you said his purpose is to keep you working.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Which is slightly different from make small businesses more successful. Keep you working is about uptime, and this make small businesses more successful. They do like security and things like that. So it's really interesting to me that these two things seem kind of the same, but there are some innate differences. And so we always say your noble purpose in business is how you make a difference to customers. Your noble purpose in your life is probably how you make a difference to others. In my business, because it is my business, they're kind of the same.
Yes.
But it defines your aim and your lane. Right. So in both of those statements, the aim is how they want to help the customer. The lane is, they didn't say IT, blah, 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 but one of them said their lane was small business. The other one said, we help you stay working. Like that's the lane they're in. They're not going to help you by, psychoanalyzing you.
Yes, exactly.
So
yeah, absolutely.
And so when you have clarity on that, it changes your whole business.
And I'm going to point this out, and I always say to people, this is not a sales show. This is not me trying to tell you to buy something, but I am going to say this for you, because we do this thing where we think, oh, I can figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
And you listened to what I just said about a client and had a perspective that was outside of my perspective, that was outside of his perspective, that was just different. And that's why, as a small business owner, you should look outside of your business, mm-hmm. whether it's hiring a coach, whether it's hiring a person to help you with your purpose, whether it's hiring a person to do your IT. They're outside of your business, and it gives them a different take on what's going on inside your business.
They have a different lens. And so that's exactly right. So what we end up doing a lot of times is, 8 years ago, when I first started this work, it was based on, as I said in the opener, some research that I had done that showed that salespeople who carried this sense of noble purpose in their heart, who truly wanted to make a difference to customers, outperformed salespeople whose heads were just thinking, gotta hit my number. And where the work started was that top 10% of salespeople who had this different ethos were the outliers. And so we thought, how can we scale that? And so for the answer that I gave, where I saw the distinctions in those purposes, was because I've spent 8 years figuring out, how do you get the right story in the hearts and minds of your sellers, of your leaders, of your frontline employees, everyone in the organization? How do you embed this story and scale it so that it drives their behavior? So you could talk to me about IT bells and whistles all day, and I wouldn't even have a clue what you're talking about. But once we get into story and language, I've spent years on this. Absolutely. And so I can see the things. And it's the same with anything else. Like when you were talking about IT, I felt kind of guilty, because I was like, oh God, that's our VP of projects. I call her because she's young. I need to stop doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And that was such an eye opener for me.
Yeah.
This one of the things I love about this show and doing this show is, first of all, I said I feel like I could talk forever with some of my guests, but you in particular, I'm sitting here thinking you said something in that was interesting. You said they've got to sell this idea of purpose, this purpose. They've got to sell it to their team so that their
Yeah.
team can go out and sell for them. And I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about something similar. And she said, my team isn't going to do this. And I said to her, that's because you don't buy into it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not buying into it. If you're not buying into it, they won't buy into it. So I love what you said, that you've got to know it. You've got to, as the leader, you've got to really know. You can't just pick something and say, oh yeah, this is my purpose, I'm just going to do that.
And the thing is, if you're a founder and you start the business, I guarantee you got something.
Yes.
There was some reason, some market need that you saw, something that you wanted to see done that wasn't being done. I guarantee you have a noble purpose. And we call it noble purpose because it is in the service of others. But what we find is people think that means it needs to be disconnected from their commercial model. And the opposite is true. That need, that thing that you saw, Steve Jobs famously said, we're going to put a dent in the universe. Maybe you thought we're going to change the way people experience ice cream. I don't know what it was,
right.
But
right.
Or just we're going to provide a better, a better widget, a better online experience, whatever it was. That's your noble purpose. But what happens when we work, a lot of times when we've worked with a lot of companies, especially as they go to round B and C of funding, where they've got to amp up their staff and they're beyond that little tribe of people that were all bought in, is you've got to be clear and specific because you've got to scale it. Right. Otherwise, once you get beyond the 25, 50, 75 people and you start getting into hundreds of people, it'll become just a job and they will default to their function. They'll default to, I'm the accountant, I'm the seller, I'm the marketer. Instead, you want everyone defaulting to, this is the thing we do for customers. And that becomes the North Star. So you got to be clear and specific about it as a leader.
Right. Absolutely. I completely buy into this idea. I think it's and so I did say, and we talked about it a little bit. So I said the thing about, we started Burgers and Bans for suicide prevention. That was a very personal thing for us, but it has been something that's been different than anything else. I mean, our business purpose, we try. Our goal is to help small businesses shine. We want them to be seen. Mm-hmm. And then my personal purpose in life that runs also through the business is the suicide prevention. But you do have to know that. What are you doing for your clients? What makes you stand out and what makes you different? And knowing that purpose, having that purpose changes everything. So,
it does. And so one of the things that we did in Selling with Noble Purpose, I say we and my co-author, Elizabeth Latardo, one of the things that we did, this is the second version of the book. And so we took everything we'd learned with clients and we wanted to make it really easy for anyone to pick it up and do this on their own. So we work with a lot of big companies, we consult with a lot of firms, but we wanted to make it so, okay, you're a small firm, how do you do it? And there's a chapter in there on how to find your noble purpose. And it's by answering 3 questions. We call them the 3 discovery questions. How do you make a difference to clients? Because if people are buying from you, they're doing it for a reason.
Right.
How do you do it differently than your competition? And it may be you have some better technology, or maybe simply you care more. We got a whole list of prompts in there. And then on the third thing is, on your best day, what do you love about your job? Think about those big moments in your job. And a lot of times what we find when we say that to people is they're not huge moments. They're small moments. And they're moments when they saw their work mattered. They had this sense of belonging and significance. And so if you answer those 3 questions, in that story is your noble purpose. And it may be, people worry about getting a succinct statement. There's usually a statement that comes out of it, but what's more important is the story behind it that you as a leader are telling around why this is so important to you. So I'll give you an example. In our company, our purpose is help leaders drive revenue and do work that makes you proud. Okay. And the reason that that's so important to me is 10 years ago, I was running a business that struggled to make payroll during the recession. And if you're not
Okay.
making money, it's a nightmare. Ruins your
Right.
family life, ruins your employees' family life. It's terrible. And so we want to help people have positive revenue growth. And the reason we want to help people do work that makes them proud is I grew up with two parents. One loved their job and one didn't like their job. And I saw the difference it made.
Oh
So
yeah.
so for me, it's really personal. I want you to make money and I want you to go home at the end of the day going, I'm not good, kind of tired.
That's awesome. I love that. And actually, I love what you said about story because we just had Melanie Gow on Monday talking about storytelling and the importance of it, and in not just your everyday life, but in your business and in everything that you do. And I think that's I say it a lot about core value. Like if you
Yeah.
want to know your core value, look at the stories you tell.
Yeah.
The
They
stories you tell
reveal it.
most often will reveal your core value.
Go to a family reunion back when we used to do things and listen to the stories that are told about the family that are told every year. That tells you what that family believes. And so what you as a leader, one of the problems is though, and we see this all the time in leadership, is the leader may believe in the solution, in the offering, but a lot of their language is very transactional. It's hit these production targets, hit these revenue targets, we've got to do this. And so what their team takes away from that, unfortunately, is all the leader cares about is money, which is
Right.
actually not true. That's just the language of business. And we haven't been schooled in business like people are in religion, which every religion has a book of stories, like you
Right.
do in families where you tell the family stories. We haven't been trained in business to tell those stories. But when you do as a leader and you say, let me tell you a story about a customer last week and how we made a difference to them, what'll happen is that story hard codes a belief system onto the people. They
Right.
start to believe more in your solution. They believe you believe in it and you care, and it changes the dynamics because it lights up their frontal lobes. Whereas if you're just saying, hit the production targets, hit the number, they're going to start to
Right.
feel like just drones.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is so important. I actually had a boss one time. He says, your goal is to make me rich.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that's my goal.
I can't
And,
wait to get out of bed for that every day.
every day. So, yeah, exactly. All right. I want to talk about the misconceptions about noble purpose.
Mhm.
So, we talked a little bit about it being, people thinking it's fluffy, but what are some of the other misconceptions about the noble purpose?
One of the big misconceptions is that belief is gauzy and you can't scale belief. And nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, there's a great book, Sapiens, that talks about the only way that human beings have accomplished big things is because they were able to scale belief in a cause bigger than themselves. And so one of the big misconceptions is, well, noble purpose is for charity, or noble purpose is for doctors or nurses. And that may be true, but noble purpose is for an IT firm, an ice cream firm, and we have a concrete company who's one of our clients who became a best place to work and became the leader in their space. Now, if you think of the least sexy products you can imagine, concrete would rank right up there.
Right.
But
Right.
try living your life without concrete. I mean,
Yes.
getting the foundation of a building safe and secure and dry and lasting, like it's a really big deal. And so that's why I say, like, look at the impact that you have, and you will see where your noble purpose is. And it's not gauzy.
Right.
What it takes to infuse it is story. So you have to move from, if you think about businesses in three stages, you got a sloppy business that doesn't have good processes, it doesn't have good metrics and all that. You got to shore that up. You got to get things buttoned up and right, or at least close to
Right.
that. But then if you want to go to the next level of a business, that's where it becomes more qualitative. That differentiator, that attitude that your people have when they deal with customers, that level of innovation, that drive, and where that comes from is a deep-seated belief. And you as a leader can fuel that belief.
Right. Right. Yes, I see that. And it was so, like I said yesterday, I had this conversation and I could see that. And I'm like, I don't understand why she's not seeing that she can't get that across to them
Yeah.
until she can have that same feeling, until she
Yeah.
can find that same feeling and understand what she's trying to go for here.
And
So,
what I would say, if you're a leader, you don't have to be 100% there. You get yourself to 60 or 70 and you start saying, I've been thinking about how we make a difference to our customers. And you just ask your team, how do you think we make a difference? Because if they are dealing with customers, they might know better than you. And let that belief start to build organizationally. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be a compelling or inspiring speaker. Like I said, we had a bunch of IT guys,
right, exactly,
getting all excited
exactly.
about this. And so literally ask your team, use the book Selling with Noble Purpose, and ask your team those 3 questions. How do we make a difference? How do we do it differently? And on your best day, what do you love about your job? And that creates that organizational ethos. And what we're seeing now, when everyone went home in COVID, is all of those culture building tools that we had, like the break room and the posters and the free snacks. Well, we don't have any of those now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So you need people who believe in the value of what you are offering. We call them the tribe of true believers. And if you want to have a really successful business, you need to create that.
I love that. And that I was making myself a note here to say at the end of the year, at the end of the month, actually at the end of every week, I go through with my team what were your wins for the week.
Yeah, we do.
But it just occurred to me that I think I'm going to change it and say, what was your favorite story of the week?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that is so helpful. I think if I can see what's helping them and they can see what's helping me, what's inspiring us, I think it's going to be very, very helpful. So
We had one leader, and I just wrote a piece in Harvard Business Review about this, a leader at Atlantic Capital Bank, guy named Kurt Schreiner. And the piece is called three Things That Stymie Corporate Purpose Initiatives. And one of the things was the language. And so what this guy started doing was he started changing the way that he ran his meetings and using different language. And he starts with every meeting with, when he does a weekly meetings with his team, how do we make a difference to a customer this week? Tell me about it. And he said, and then everything after that is about how can we do that more? And this is a bank. I see
I love that.
like,
Yeah.
does noble purpose contradict capitalism? No, this is a bank. Noble purpose is what makes capitalism work in the way it's supposed to versus
Right.
the way it's been working a lot lately.
Well, gosh, if you think about banks, and actually, I'm just going to give this right now. If you think about banks, and this year, my bank, I had the coolest story about my bank. And some people were like, should she have said that? But I don't care whether she should have or not. She said it, and to me, it showed a lot about who she was. I went to a networking event. And somebody from my bank was there, and it was an online networking event. So it was a bunch of people, about 30 people in a room. And when I came into the room, she saw me and she goes, Ann, your PPP loan just got approved. And I was like, oh, she's like, I saw it come across and I was so excited for you. And I was like, how cool is that my banker was excited? Yes, she cared. That is huge to be able to do that, to be able to say that. I love that. I love, you think about the purpose. So her, for her, being able to help a business meant that much to her. Being able to help my small business, it meant that much to her.
And that's how you want all of your employees to feel about your customers, to be excited about creating wins for your customers.
Exactly.
So, and it can scale. It doesn't have to be small. It's more challenging when you become a big company. But I would give the example we often cite is Apple. If you go in there, those geniuses are happy about helping you.
Right. Right, exactly.
Like they're not like, oh crap, another stupid customer. They're like, hey, and then when they solve your problem, they'll like fist bump you and everything. They're excited for you. And that's what you want, is you want to fuel that sense of accomplishment for people. The other reason that it's really important is, banks are doing well now, but every business is not. And you want your people tethered to something bigger than money. And this seems counterintuitive, but if people are just tethered to, are we making money or not? And this really applies to you as an owner. they're going to go to despair really quickly when you're not making
Yes.
money, and they're not going to have the best behaviors. Yes, you need to make money, but money is a lagging indicator. It is a reflection of how well you are serving customers and how well your people are interacting with customers and how well your people are innovating for customers. So if you want them to do that, you've got to have them thinking, our purpose is to make a difference to customers. Because when
Right.
you're tethered to that, there was some research from Michigan State University that's from Dr. Valerie Good that we cited in Selling with Noble Purpose. And it's that salespeople with a sense of purpose bigger than money have put forth more effort over time, and they have greater tenacity and resilience than salespeople who are just focused on their quotas. Because one thing we know about humans, we're at our best when we feel like other people are counting on us.
Yes, I absolutely believe in that. I think that is really true. I love that you had this was a question that you had kind of posed to me earlier that about
Mhm.
the does purpose contradict capitalism? And I love that because I think so many people, and actually I have a son who's 26 who would say, yes, you can't run a business and be anything other than somebody who's running a business and out for the money.
Yeah.
And I haven't found that to be true at all. My chimney company, he does it because he wants to keep families safe because he knows that chimney fires are very dangerous. They're fast,
Yeah.
they're behind the walls, you don't see them, and then the house is just lost. Right? So he didn't start, yes, it's how he takes care of his family, but it's not the purpose.
Well, and one of the things that's happened is if you, a lot of people are familiar with this. Last summer, the CEO Roundtable said that they were shifting from this shareholder primacy model, where the purpose of a business was to return earnings to shareholders, and shifting to the purpose of a business is to improve the life for stakeholders, which is customers, the community, the employees, and they put shareholders last. And so what happens is we create a false dichotomy. And there have been a lot of businesses whose purpose was to return money to the senior leadership and the shareholders. Let's just call it like it is. That was the
Right.
North Star of the business. That drove everything the business did. I call it quarterly capitalism. A lot of people do. And what happened in those environments were, when that was the North Star of the business, they would make bad decisions for customers, strip the joy and meaning of work from employees, the CEO pay, senior leader pay versus average employee pay, the gap widens. All of those things happen when you make your North Star money.
Yes.
And like it or not, businesses, small and large, are one of the organizing principles of our communities, of our lives. And
Right.
so one of the things that we do with organizations is, the data shows us when you make a noble purpose bigger than money, those companies have better long-term earnings. You outperform the market by over 350%. And you can see it. Who would you rather work with? A company who says, our job is to make money for the CEO, or a company who says, our noble purpose is to improve life for you, the customer?
Right.
So,
Right.
so I don't buy in to this idea that capitalism is bad. We have terrible teachers in some places. We don't think teaching is terrible. We have horrible religious leaders. We don't think they're all bad. You know,
Right.
so,
Exactly.
so what we've allowed is this narrative of quarterly capitalism to dominate business, when actually 90%, which is not everybody, but 90% of business people would actually prefer something else. Because it's no coincidence that quarterly capitalism and shareholder primacy were the last 20 years coincided with employee engagement.
Right, exactly. So you may know this off the top of your head. I am drawing a blank, and I was actually looking at my bookshelf. I think it's probably at my office and not here. There was a book that was written, and it may be written before I read it this year, about it was a CEO of a company, and it was a debt collection company.
Mhm.
And they were tanking. They were just they just kept going down and down and down, and then they changed the way they did it to the calls where they're calling and collecting debt, which should be this horrible thing to have to
Yeah.
do, became something that was much better. They changed their purpose. They changed their idea, the way they were going to talk to their customer. Not just their, because their customers were the people who they're collecting for, but how
Right.
are they going to talk to the people on the
Who owe the
phone?
money.
Right. And
Mhm.
they changed it, and it became friendlier, and it became helpful. And they're like, how can we help you do this? Right.
Totally
And
different mindset.
it built the company. They skyrocketed for income. They did really really well. They helped their customers, but they also helped those people on the other end. And they, instead of losing and bleeding employees, they were keeping them, and they were moving them up, and things were changing. It was a really wonderful story, because you go,
Well,
heck, if you could take debt collection and do that, what else
and
can you do?
who wants to be the person that is having these negative interactions with customers and thinking only about themselves? I mean, who wants to
Right.
be that person? I'll give you an example of this very thing. I mentioned that one of the propelling events for me in writing Selling with Noble Purpose was my husband and I lost a business during the recession. And so we had debt collectors calling us. If someone said, how does
Oh
a business
yeah.
go bankrupt? And this woman, the woman, Susan Scott, who wrote Fierce Conversation, said, really slowly at first and then really, really fast. And that is exactly how it happens. And I remember how horrible it was, but I remember this one guy from American Express who we owed a ton of money to, calling and saying, you know what, I see this all the time. You're going to get through this. It's going to be a rough 6 months. You will rebound. And I'm like, are you like my mental health counselor? But this guy was so nice from American Express.
Right.
But he didn't back down. He's like, let's figure out what we can do here. But I'll tell you, don't think that this is the end for you. You're going to be okay. And he was an older guy. He said, I've been doing this a long time. You're going to be okay. Let's figure out what we can do. And you can imagine what a loyal American Express customer I still am.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the thing is, that's in a bad situation. But what Noble Purpose does is it kickstarts empathy for the people on the receiving end of your business. And nothing bad happens when you do that. All good things happen when you kickstart empathy and compassion, whether you're trying to sell multi-million-dollar deals, software deals. We have some clients who do that. Your sightline, understanding that customer under pressure on the other end, or whether, like you just said, you're trying to collect debts and you understand that this is a real live human being I'm talking to. Anywhere on that spectrum, when you put a noble purpose into play in your business, you jumpstart this compassion and empathy from your employees. And ironically, people are so afraid because they think, well, we won't make money. Just like you said in that story, all the research tells us you will make more money.
Absolutely. And actually that leads me to this. I want you to go back, because you've given a couple of numbers. I want you to go back and give some of those numbers again. Talk a little bit about what those results are and how much of a difference it's making.
So I'll give you 3 examples. One, big picture numbers. The studies show that when companies have a noble purpose bigger than money and they make that their North Star, they outperform the competition by over 350%. And the reason for that is when you have clarity about how you make a difference to customers and you make it the centerpiece of your business, you create competitive differentiation. You create it in the way your employees interact with customers, and you also drive innovation because people are focused on customers. So that's why those companies outperform the market, and they also have higher emotional engagement from employees. And I use that word emotional engagement very differently and very intentionally. Most people talk about employee engagement. Let's be honest, we're talking about emotional engagement, people who care. So organizations with a purpose bigger than money outperform the market by over 350%. Taking it down one level or a couple levels to individual salespeople whose noble purpose is to make a difference to customers outperform salespeople who are focused on targets and quotas. And we've seen some of our clients literally double revenue when they made this noble purpose the North Star. The third thing that I want to share is employees who have a sense of purpose and meaning in their work are more likely to stay with your organization and be top performers. So it works on every level. Organizationally, it also drives your sales results, and it drives job satisfaction and emotional engagement from employees.
That's great. To me, I so love this subject and I could talk to you all day long. But I do want to talk to you about a couple of things real quick. So you have a book, you have selling with noble purpose, but I'm seeing behind you, you have a book, Leading with Noble
Right.
Purpose. So how do people get them?
Amazon, go on Amazon. And the new edition of Selling with Noble Purpose just came out. And I know a lot of people are listening to things. I also recorded the audio for it. So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah. So if my voice right now is annoying to you, just buy the book. If you're liking it, buy the audio.
So I did not record. I don't know who did or how it's done, but I did a book and somebody said, I love listening to your book because it's like you're in my head when I'm running.
Yeah.
Like that's the coolest thing to have somebody say that they didn't mind me being in their head too, because you
Well,
might
I
mind.
get that. When people have listened to the audio and then they call us, because we get a lot of clients read the book and will call and say, this is what I want to do. I got a big company. Can you help me with this? Or medium-sized company. But one of the things that I notice when they call is they feel like they know me. And they're right. Because I tell like some personal stories in the book, this dramatic story of losing this business and going bankrupt and how we sold our way out of that, like literally calling on customers. I tell
Right.
stories about my dad and my kids, because just like we say in business, you want to tell stories to make your business come alive for people. That's one of the things I notice in the books that I like to read. So I always do that in the books I write, is the stories are where the reader can see themselves and go, oh yeah, I can do that, versus,
Right.
just describing it in just business terms.
Right. Yeah, I think it's totally true. And actually it's pretty much how I built my business. If I think about it, I wrote a blog called Anne's Running Commentary. It's all about running. Had nothing at all to do with what
Mhm.
I'm doing right now. But it was through that people kept saying, "Can you help me? Can you help me
Yeah,
with my social media?" I'm like, so you do. The stories matter. The fact that people get to
they
know you
do.
matters. So, all right, let's talk. How do they find you? I've got your website up here. We're out. So McLeodandmore.com.
Yeah, .com. And if you're interested in our work, you can go on there. One of the things people really have told me that they like is we have on our homepage, we have 3 CEOs in very different businesses. One of them is the concrete company, one of them is a bank, and one of them is a travel company. And they talk about, there's videos of them, and they talk about what they did in their organizations and how this changed their organization. So a lot of people have told us that they like that. The other place that you can find me is you can follow me on LinkedIn. I do a LinkedIn Live every Friday, and we also have the Work on Purpose newsletter, which is free. We put a ton of content on LinkedIn. We always had put a fair amount, but with the pandemic, we decided that we were just going to put as much stuff as, because it's free, that we were just going to put as much stuff on there as we could to be as helpful to people as we possibly could, in line with our noble purpose. And people have found it really helpful.
So can you do me a favor after we're done, if you can put into the chat your the way that your URL, sorry,
I will.
words this morning, for not just for this, but for your LinkedIn as well, because I think it would be very, very helpful for people to connect with you over there. I love what you're doing. I think it's really important. I want to remind everybody, well, you stick around for just a minute. Everybody, next week we have a couple of things coming up. The one I'm most excited about, we're speaking with Shelly Spiegel about remote work, and she's been doing this for 20 years. She's been doing remote work in her business exclusively for 20 years. So she's going to give us some tips on how best to do that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to her. And then we have Christmas, and there will be some episodes in between, but they are all recorded episodes. And then we'll come back in the new year with 1 episode a week instead of 2. And I will have a little more free time in my life. So that will be a little bit nice. So I hope you guys are doing well. Please take care of yourself. Because we do burgers and bands for suicide prevention, I want to remind you that you are not alone. We got a call this morning from somebody who reached out. They called me actually from the hospital and said, "Hey, I want to tell you I'm in the hospital and I want to thank you because you told me to ask for help." So please, if you're struggling, you are not alone. Get help. Nobody's going to think less of you. I was so proud of her. I told her I think she's one of the strongest people I know, because it takes a lot to ask for help. So please do ask for it if you need it. Please do subscribe. My kids still think I'm a nerd because I haven't quite hit 1,000 subscribers yet. So please do that. We have a comment. Let me make sure before I stop. We have so Steve Atkinson, who is one of our favorite listeners. He's always there. Says Merry Christmas to everybody. So hope you guys are doing well. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a Happy New Year. And we'll see you in the new year. You stick around for a minute and I'll be right back.